And I believe we'll start now. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our NAACP Fairfax County Branch May general membership meeting. Thank you all for coming. We have a very, very, very uh, uh, informational presentation dealing with the environment, and that will be facilitated by our second VP, Ms. Vice President Karen Camblin. I am Nikki Zimmerman. I am you all's president, and we are going to start now. Before we get everything going, can we start off with a prayer? Is anyone from?
Yes, I've got a prayer.
Thank you so much.
This is a prayer for the beloved community. Lord, you call us out of captivity into the freedom of your beloved community. As we pass through the wilderness spaces of our lives, grant us ears to hear you, eyes to see you, and hearts to ache for you, that we may not turn away from the brothers and sisters who help us remember who we are. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Next slide. Secretary's report. Secretary O'Brien.
Good evening, everyone. Just a quick request for our president to ask for a motion to approve the minutes from April's meeting, which were included in the most recent announcement of this meeting.
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting.
Seconded.
There we go.
Second.
You have a second? Okay.
Yes.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. And I believe the ayes have it. Thank you.
Back
Next
to you.
slide. Anything else, Secretary O'Brien?
Back to you, President Zimmerman.
Thank you. We do not have a treasury report this evening, but before we continue on, for those of you who attended last month's meeting, we implemented something a little different. We're asking that if you are a member of a congregation, part of the faith community, that you in the chat, please put the name of your church, the leading pastor or minister, and a good email address or phone number where our Religious Affairs Committee can reach out to them and let them know all the things that we're doing within the branch as it relates to religious affairs. So if you all are a member of a church, please put your church's information within the chat, and someone from the Religious Affairs Committee will jot that down, and we will build a distro list to include your church into the things that we're doing and keep them abreast to what's going on in the advocacy dealings within the county and what we're doing. I would also like to give some save the dates if we can. Coming up, we have our Juneteenth memorial at Bull Run Park, and that will be facilitated by our Religious Affairs Committee, and they will speak a little bit more on it, but we're asking all hands on deck. If you all do not have any plans for Juneteenth, we ask that you join us over at Bull Run Park, and you all should have gotten the flyer for that, or if you follow us on any of our socials, you would see that on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We have that coming soon, which is next month. Next month, we also have, for our general membership meeting, we have the authors of Black communities in Fairfax County that they will be presenting at that meeting. So That'll be a very informative meeting. We will learn about the Black communities that were established here in Fairfax, uh, pre-slavery and post-slavery, and the uh, timeline and where those families are now, and the contributions of the Black community here in Fairfax County. So please do not miss that meeting for next month. We also have our Boys Symposium, September 28th at Gum Springs Community Center from 10 to 3. And there will be a save the date flyer for that as well. And we are looking forward to the gala. We have a gala, our annual gala, which would be November 2nd at the Tyson's Corner Marriott. And our Freedom Fund Committee will talk a little bit about that this evening. I think I've covered everything, so we're going to roll into committee reports. We will start with membership. Is anyone from membership here? Okay, armed services. Anyone from armed services? Youth council.
Oh, President Zimmerman, I'm here from memberships, but I don't believe we have anything to report. Sorry about that.
No worries. Is that Monique? Because your name didn't come up.
No, this is Arlanda, but I've only been a part of the
Okay,
committee
sorry.
for about 4 to 6 weeks, and so I don't believe I have anything to report at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Religious affairs.
Yes, President Zimmerman, thank you. We would just like to briefly, following on what you said, encourage members and their friends or members in their congregations to participate in our Juneteenth commemoration, which, as the flyer and as the email had said, is on the 15th of June, which is a Saturday. It's at 3 p.m. and it's at Bull Run Regional Park at the water park, or it begins next to the water park. So this Juneteenth commemoration is not going to be a festive party inside the water park. It's going to be an opportunity to reflect and think about what emancipation has meant here in our area, Northern Virginia, in our county, and what emancipation still has to mean for us moving forward. And we'll be able to reflect on that by, standing on the ground where African Americans who had lived as free people, lived with African Americans who had come here enslaved to this area and had been manumitted by Robert Carter III. And in that area, a church was formed around 1800, and it was a multiracial church. There were some white people who attended that church, and next to where that church, we're pretty certain there was a graveyard that was a graveyard for the congregants in that church. And of course, next to that, I mentioned the water park at the beginning. The pool at the water park exists in large part because of the descendants of one of the families of African Americans who established that community at the beginning of the 19th century. And that those African American descendants donated the land to the Parks Authority for a pool on the condition that the pool would be an integrated pool, which made it the first publicly managed pool in the state of Virginia that was integrated when it was constructed in the late and opened in the late 1960s. So it's an opportunity to be on a spot and think about emancipation as something that has happened throughout our history and is still needed in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. And again, all hands on deck. If you're not doing anything for Juneteenth, please meet us at Bull Run at 3 o'clock. Freedom Fund /WIN. Is Miss Evelyn here?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, everyone. As far as WIN, right now we have no energy putting forth on that committee. We're focusing everything on the Freedom Fund, but we do have some ideas for next year. but for a win. But for right now, let me focus on Freedom Fund. We have a number of committees. We met on, let me see, what was the day? May 15th. We had an amazing turnout. We have committee members for silent auction. We have people who are contacting vendors. We have a number of folks who have nominated potential keynote speakers. We're looking at Bakari Sellers. One, Dr. Hampton put out Brian, what is his name?
Brian Stevenson of Equal Justice
Brian
Initiative.
Stevenson. I have reached out to him. He hasn't gotten back to me,
I
but I'll
can't
send him
imagine he
another
would,
email.
but you never know. Keep praying.
I am. We've reached out to him, and we've reached out to, believe it or not, one of our, he's not a member of NAACP, but he is a member of the community. We've reached out, he's being mentored by Ben Crump. So we're putting out these feelers. Right now, the front runner is Bakari Sellers, though. And if anybody wants to know, we have a couple of others who we've contacted. But if anybody wants to know, please put it in the chat and I'll send you. Oh, Miss Liz. Liz has compiled a beautiful spreadsheet or poster that tells you a little bit about each of the speakers that we are looking to pursue for our keynote speaker at the event. We also are looking to give awards out to a church, community church, a organization that does wonderful things for Fairfax County, as well as recognize young adults who are really, really making a commitment to helping their community, encouraging their education or pursuing their education. So we've got a lot of irons in the fire. And did I say also that we have another payment that's coming up? President Zimmerman and I went to the Tyson's Marriott. We made our initial deposit. So we have another payment coming on June 17th. And then we have another one in August 12th. And then the final one like 10 days prior to the event. But the team, oh, and we have one of our team members is contacting a minority-owned baker. She's going to be working with Marriott to decide on the beautiful decorations that we're going to have. So there are many hands that are trying to make this a successful event. Communications has developed a wonderful flyer. If anyone needs to look and or have access to the flyer, it has the QR codes in it for if you want to make a donation. And our biggest contributor right now is getting sponsorship. So we have a list of organizations. We have 4 people who have volunteered to make contact with these organizations to see if they would support us financially, and then have like we've defined certain levels, $3,000, $2,000, $500. We do have one who has made a sponsorship donation. So if anyone is interested in joining any of the committees, you are more than welcome. Our next meeting is June 9th. So we're moving along. We're a little bit ahead of time, a little schedule. So that's wonderful because it's a lot of moving pieces that we need to pull together to make this an amazing event. And by the way, tickets will be $85 for members and $100 if you're not a member. So that's a nice savings, $85 for members, $100 if you're not a member. And of course, the previous Freedom Fund committee members are working right alongside of us, helping us to avoid any pitfalls that might have happened before, so we can together make this a successful and informational event, because it's our biggest fundraiser for the year. So anybody, you want to pitch in, you want to be a part of this fantastic opportunity, please reach out to me at any time after this call. Thank you.
Thank you. And also, if you all have a direct connection to a local business who will give us any level of sponsorship through Freedom Fund, we would give you a free ticket to the Freedom Fund event. And so that is a great incentive to include membership in trying to get us some sponsors for this for the gala. And also, as I believe Ms. Evelyn stated, the monies that the funds that we get from the gala, we actually use those for the upcoming advocacy for the next year. So a lot is at stake when we do the Freedom Fund Gala. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you, Ms. Evelyn. Anybody
Thank
from
you.
PAC?
Thank you so much, President.
Yes. Anybody from Political Action?
Good evening, President Zimmerman. We just have an announcement real quick to remind everyone that there is an upcoming primary election. Forgive my voice. The last day to apply for a ballot to be mailed to you is June 7th, and voter registration offices will open early for early voting on June 8th. The actual date of the primary will be Tuesday, June 18th. Want to remind everyone to get out and vote. All elections are important. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear from Budget. Okay, Criminal Justice.
Hey everyone. So the main thing on the agenda is our upcoming meeting with Chief Davis on Monday morning next week. We're going to be discussing primarily data surrounding use of force policies and also further communication between our branch and their office going forward. And a couple of weeks after that, we're also planning to meet with Commonwealth's Attorney Discano and discussing issues that came up in our advocacy agenda regarding them following guidelines. But those are the two big main points on our short-term agenda for now.
Thank you, Petite. Anyone from Housing? Okay, now before we move on to education, I wanted to let you all know that we are actively seeking members to join our various committees. We are looking for volunteers, and some of the committees that we need volunteers on is Criminal Justice, PAC. We don't need anybody from Housing right now, but Criminal Justice, PAC, Legal Redress, and I'm sorry, I did not call Legal Redress to give a brief, and I will do that as once I close this out. But those are some of the committees that we need volunteers on. So if you all are willing to help, if you all are excited and activated as far as helping to continue to push our agenda, continue to push our advocacy, and you would like to get more involved, please visit our website, and all the committee chairs, the emails are there on the website, and you can reach out to the committee that you are interested in and seek more information. I caution you all and let you know that we work a lot on these committees because there's a lot of work to do within the county. So please, if you do want information, just know that we have full agendas, and we need volunteers to help us with our commitment to change. Anybody from Legal Redress? Mike, are you here? I think I saw him.
I admitted him, so.
I'm here. It just took me a minute to unmute myself. So thank you for that. And I did want to introduce everybody. And I know we only see each other quarterly or a situation to bring up, but we have an intern for the summer from the University of Wisconsin. His name is Sam Biddick. He's actually on tonight. He doesn't have to throw up his camera or anything like that, but just wanted to acknowledge that. And it's always great to have young people who are willing to work with us whenever available, but especially during the summer. In terms of, we do a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but we are still working on scheduling a time to meet with Supervisor Lusk, who is the chair of the Public Safety Committee. And a lot of that focuses on the Police Civilian Review Panel. folks remember from our advocacy agenda rollout meeting, I kind of highlighted some aspects of how that functions in Fairfax County. And specifically, it does not have independent investigative authority for the ability to even review a lot of it. They cannot review use of force cases. And that's something that the county kind of limited the scope for. It's not something that's Virginia State Code determined. It can actually do more than it's doing. And part of our conversation is going to be the process that myself and Meredith Havasty, who's a member at large and a member of Legal Redress, have been through in supporting a complainant through that process, and frankly dissatisfied with the outcome. We're getting more information about what will it take to enable this body to have more teeth. And we're also, I think we have a meeting scheduled early June with the liaison to the disciplinary review panel. I think it's a somewhat new position. They had an executive director a couple of years ago, and I think this position is supposed to serve a similar role. So that's coming up. That's, like I said, that's scheduled beginning in June. Still trying to figure out when. Going to meet with Supervisor Lusk. And there's some other things that I can't yet share, but there's probably going to be opportunity for some community engagement and support of some folks that we've been working with. So stay tuned for that.
Thank you. Any questions for any of our committees before we move forward with education? Okay, so everybody, I have an event that that's why I'm sitting in my car. I'm gonna hand over the rest of the meeting to the capable hands of our first VP, Dr. Sujata Hampton. If you all have any questions for me, please relay them to Dr. Hampton, to VP Hampton, I'm sorry. And, or you can email me at, you have to go through comms email, but if you have anything that you would like to ask me or any suggestions or any comments or anything like that, if you don't relay them to VP Hampton, you can send an email through the comms email and let me know. Other than that, great meeting. I hope you all have a great meeting. I look forward to watching the playback. And if you all need anything, please let me know. I'm going to hand it over to VP Hampton to give her education committee report and to take over the meeting. So thank you all and good night.
Bye-bye, Nikki. Have a good time.
Alrighty.
I will be very quick because I want us to get started with our presentation on time. I just wanted to share with you that our reorganized education committee met on Wednesday of last week. We had an excellent, very productive meeting, and there are a couple of things that I wanted to let everyone know. You may remember at our last month's meeting, Jenna White, who I think might be still on this call, she had brought up trying to get a screening of the Right to Read film that NAACPs were showing for free, and we have not yet had success in getting anyone from National NAACP to get back to us. We're looking into that. I just wanted to let everyone know that we have not forgotten and we are trying to figure that out. Secondly, I wanted to let everyone know that I spoke with someone from the 1619 Project who reached out to us regarding putting a literacy program into Fairfax County after school programs. It's very, very interesting. I did put that into meeting notes for the education committee because I met with her the day after our meeting. Extremely interesting stuff. But the ask I have for you all is if you know of any after school programs that might be interested in finding out ways in which we could partner with them, or we could, it is beyond the scope. What that literacy project does by the 1619 Project is beyond the scope of our regular committee work. And we're trying to figure out how to help them. Oh, another thing, I have a co-chair, his name is Marquise Smalls, and we are brainstorming. We're trying to figure out how we can make this really cool thing work. But if you know of any after school programs, just, send a note and I would be very interested in hearing what you have to say. Oh, Mike.
Just so I'm clear, are you saying a vendor that provides after school programs, or schools that have after school programs?
So usually I don't see, I think any way would be fine, Mike. Like any kind, it cannot be done during the school day because the school day is spoken for. And I think that the efficacy of the program that has been shown through the original program would require a regular meeting of children. So it can't just be an event. It's an ongoing support of kids. So yeah, so it's an ongoing, I don't know, private SAC even that's doing, I don't think SAC may be confined by the parameters of school. I don't really know, but what I'm looking for, what they were looking for, and why they contacted us is they were trying to find a way to plug into our kids with greatest need, Black children with greatest need in the ages of grades 3 to 5. So I have more details that I can talk about with anyone who's interested offline. I'm running already 1 minute over, but this is a very interesting project, and I want to just let people know if they knew of anything like that to reach out and let me know. And there's anything else I really need to tell you guys. We are still looking for someone to represent us on SCIPT and MSAOC. We have a couple of people on the education committee who are thinking about it. So if you are yourself interested, you can let me know, and we can talk, because we do have open seats there. Oh, and another thing is we're trying to get ourselves a dedicated NAACP seat on as many of the school board advisory committees as we can. We don't have one on all of them. So I will keep you posted as to our progress on trying to get our dedicated seat on a lot of these advisory committees that are relevant to our work. And that is all I have to say. And I believe I was the last, the last committee. I think everyone else went, right? We can move on. Yes? Okay, thank you, Mike. We have a really interesting program today, something new and fresh, and I'm gonna let Karen Camlin, our second vice president, introduce our speakers and the concept and everything. So I'll hand it over to Karen.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Dr. Hampton. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Karen Campbell, and thank you. That we're in for a really great conversation, a very relevant and very needed conversation. Just a really quick background before I introduce our wonderful guests here that are here today is Fairfax NAACP had received a grant to conduct an air quality study, monitoring study, and it was pre-COVID. And as you know, there are a lot of things that happened, so it was kind of shelved. And now we are resurfacing this monitored study. And we're going to focus on areas. So probably our target area is going to be over in the Wharton area with communities that are within close proximity to transportation facilities in particular. And we're going to get a baseline of what the air quality is like that in those areas. And so we're going to be looking, and I have a link for volunteers to sign up, because we're going to be building and designing the monitoring study and getting it, conducting it, and also analyzing the results, the data we receive. Before I move on rather quickly, I just want to talk about on June 1st, we're going to be having a Dust to Dust nature walk. So please register. I just wanted to give it a second plug. Joining us with us today is Dr. Janet Phoenix, who I've known for several years, and Dr. Phoenix is an assistant research professor and professor of health policy in the School of Public Health at George Washington University. And so Dr. Phoenix is going to be here to give us an overview about, what is air quality and why it's so important, and the public health implications to poor air quality. And joining us as well is Arielle Wharton, who is a criminologist with the University of Maryland, and she directs the center's Mid-Atlantic Data Collaborative, the EJC Screen, My Block app, and is involved in a lot of different technical tools and funding sources. And so she's here to kind of give us some background of these are the tools and technical resources that are available to us as we move forward in this learning process. So with that, I will turn the screen over to Dr. Janet Phoenix, who will kick us off, followed by Arielle Wharton.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks very much for inviting me to speak to you this evening. I'm really excited to hear about the work you're planning to do. I think it's really important to be able to kind of highlight hotspots, if you will, areas where communities may be more exposed to toxic substances in the air. And that's usually because they are close to either facilities or to transportation infrastructure that's really contributing a lot of toxic substances to the air that they breathe. So I'm going to give you kind of an overview. I would not say that I'm an expert on air pollution, but you know, I have worked with a number of communities who have looked at air pollution in conjunction with sources of exposure to some of the same pollutants in the indoor environment. And it is a pretty seamless transition. And so I feel like I know enough to be able to kind of help you to understand some of those health connections, and also hopefully to get you thinking about some things that could be done in terms of remediation or mitigation or exposure reduction that may protect some of the communities that you're concerned about and that you'll be focusing on in the work that you're planning to do. Next slide, please. So by way of background, I really do the bulk of my work across the border in Washington, D.C. And, you know, and I have been interested in air pollution in part because it has a really adverse effect. If we could go back to the previous slide. Yes, because it has an adverse effect on the health of children. And I manage an asthma home visiting program for the local children's hospital. There are a lot of kids who are in and out of the emergency room or who are hospitalized for their asthma. And outdoor air pollution is one of the contributors. It's one of the things that's sending kids to the emergency room or sending them to the hospital for their asthma. And it's combined, of course, with other sources of exposure. And I think that's really going to be kind of my take-home message today, is that the air pollution kind of combines with lots of other things that are going on in people's environments, and it really makes them far more vulnerable to these air toxins than if they kind of didn't have all of these cumulative things coming together and making their environmental quality potentially a lot worse. Next slide, please. So the Allergy and Asthma Foundation of America ranked DC as 27th in major municipalities across the country in terms of asthma. And the prevalence of asthma actually put DC in the top spot in 2021. Next slide, please. And so, you know, we talk a lot about asthma because the literature, the scientific peer-reviewed literature really, you know, is overwhelmingly shows this connection between exposure to air pollution and asthma in particular. Now, there are links to other health outcomes, other poor health outcomes as well, some of which affect adults. But for kids, really the one that we worry about the most is asthma. And it tends to be worse in African Americans. And so this slide is meant to kind of illustrate the fact that it is an environmental justice issue, because, you know, not only are African Americans more exposed to the conditions that we know are linked to the development of the disease and to making the disease worse, exacerbations of the disease, but we're also really seeing higher rates in that population. Next slide, please. So there are, you know, a lot of additional factors, of course, that combine, as I said, you know, to this, you know, exposure to toxic substances in the air, much of which can be linked to things that come out of the tailpipes of cars and buses and trucks. But also it tends to get combined with issues regarding access to care, issues about poverty, and also exposure to environmental tobacco smoke. So it's a lot of factors combining that are contributing to these high rates of asthma that we're seeing, especially in African American youth. Next slide, please. So again, you get this relationship between, sources of emissions. So you get these chemicals, particulate matter, nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxides, and all of these things that are coming out of the tailpipes of vehicles. And depending on the type of vehicle, you can get a more toxic soup that's coming out of the tailpipe. Trucks and buses that use diesel fuel are the worst actors. But even regular automobile traffic, if it's heavy enough, is going to leave behind these lingering sources of exposure. And the mitigating factors, I live in Northern Virginia along 267 and 66. Those are the traffic corridors that I use to get in and out of the city. I'm always struck by the contrast. We've got barriers along those highways that help to channel the particulate matter and the other chemicals that are in the air and keep them close to the highway and keep them away from the residential communities that are on either side of that highway. Once I cross the border into DC, all of that goes away. And usually the only thing between the traffic corridors and the heavily populated neighborhoods that are close to them are chain link fences, which don't do anything really to mitigate the exposure or the noise. And so it's just a very, very different environment. And it says something about the value that's placed on the people who are living along the 267, 66 corridors when you compare them with people who are perhaps living along 295 and the Southeast Southwest Freeway. Climate change, of course, is exacerbating this. It's getting warmer and hotter in some places. So, you combine a highway and a hot climate in a low-lying area, and you just really get like puddles of these chemicals that are lingering close to the ground and that can be easily inhaled by people who live close to the road or who are traveling on the roadway or who are eating or working or playing in neighborhoods that abut those transportation corridors. And so all of that, kind of leads to increased mortality and morbidity in people. I did not include in this presentation, but I often include a map of the District of Columbia that shows the neighborhoods that have the highest rates of hospitalization and ER visits for kids with asthma. And it's Southeast and Northeast Washington. It's along the 295 transportation corridor. The contrast with Northwest Washington is stark and has been quantified. So 23 times the rate of hospitalizations and ER visits in Southeast and Northeast Washington when you compare those with Northwest Washington. 23 times. So, a child with asthma who lives in Northwest Washington is much, much, much less likely to have an exacerbation of their asthma when compared with a child who lives in Northeast and Southeast Washington. And the difference really is largely the difference in environmental quality that you see when you go from west to east or east to west. Excuse me. So things like cardiovascular disease, respiratory disease, lung cancer, adverse birth outcomes, low birth weights, high rates of miscarriage, diabetes, all of those are conditions that are linked to poor air quality. So it's not just respiratory disease, and it's not just diseases that affect the very young. It's the entire age spectrum. And if you look at this list, it's a lot of the diseases where you're seeing health disparities, where you're seeing higher rates of disease in African Americans when compared with others, and a lot of it is can be linked, not in its entirety, But certainly some of the higher rates we're seeing can be attributed to differences in air quality. So the work that you're planning to do is really very important, and it can make a difference based on what you're seeing. So I'm running a little behind schedule, so I'm going to try to go faster. Next slide, please, so I can give some time for my colleague Arielle to talk with you, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. I have a colleague at GW who does satellite imaging of air pollutants. And sometimes, you know, a map, an image really can tell a story. So what you're seeing on the right-hand side, again, are these traffic corridors. So you see Baltimore at the top of the map on the right and DC at the bottom. And so that deep, deep red that you're seeing, those are, you know, those are pollutants that can actually be seen from satellites. You can see the concentration along these transportation corridors. So this is not made up. It can actually be measured, and it can be illustrated, I think, very effectively with these maps. Next slide, please. So again, these are similar images that are kind of chemical specific, and nitrates are something that we really worry about a lot. Next slide, please. So this is the last slide I borrowed from my colleague, and it's a little hard to understand. I think she probably should have broken this up a bit more. But if you look at the round diagram, okay, and you'll see that the round diagrams, there's a lot of purple, okay? Well, the purple has to do with the contribution of on-road sources to poor air quality. And it's broken down by specific chemicals. So the graph on the left is particulate matter, the middle is ozone, and the right is nitrates. And you'll see that the contribution of on-road sources, the blue part of that circular diagram, is a good chunk of it is on-road sources. And then the orange is electrical generating facilities, which are also making contributions. So if you put together the purple and the orange, that's really the bulk of the contribution for air pollution. Next slide, please. So again, who's affected? It's people of color, and they're not only affected by the transportation corridors, but they're also affected by energy generating infrastructure. And if there's a factory or some kind of a plant that's emitting something toxic, that's likely to be in the same neighborhoods where you're seeing these high transportation corridors. Next slide. So, you know, I don't know the demographic information for the area that you're considering for placing the monitors, but my guess is that you probably, when you compare that neighborhood that's close to Route 1, and I think that's the area that's under consideration, when you compare that with other nearby communities, you're going to find that there's a range in terms of income, and there's a range in terms of public insurance versus private insurance. And so you're probably going to find that there are additional things that are contributing perhaps to poor health outcomes for the population that's living close to that high traffic corridor. And those things have to be factored in as well. I mean, you know, obviously if we made the environment equally supportive for all communities, we would still have issues in terms of people having access to care, and we still have issues in terms of that kind of socioeconomic gradient that exists in society. But when you put everything together, you know, it really stacks the deck and makes it much more difficult for African American families to maintain their health and to live in environments that are clean and safe and healthy. I think I've only got 2 more slides. So again, there's a contribution from facilities like this, power plants, energy generating facilities. Next slide, please. But also a contribution from these roadways. And so we really have to work very, very hard. And I know you're working very, very hard to really address some of these contributors to health disparities that we're seeing for African Americans on both sides of the border. So that's the end of my talk.
Thank you so much, Dr.
You're welcome.
Karen, would you like to introduce the next speaker?
So our next, okay, sorry, I was trying to unmute. So our next speaker is Arielle Wharton. Hi, Arielle. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi everyone. Thank you for having me today. I'm excited to share this space and, continue on from Dr. Phoenix's presentation. So I'm going to share my screen and we will get started. Okay. Can you all see? Okay, great. So hi everyone, my name is Arielle Wharton. I am a climate change specialist for the Center for Community Engagement, Environmental Justice and Health. I know it's a lot of words, but you can just say SIEGE, much easier, but it's because we do so much within our center. We are within the School of Public Health under our director, Dr. Shakobi Wilson. So I kind of just want to give a quick overview on what SIEGE does. So SIEGE, we train residents impacted by unwanted land uses, pollution, environmental hazards, to use science for justice and social change. So one of Dr. Wilson's slogans is, using empowerment science. And I know empowerment is spelled incorrectly there, but he really wants to get the message across that we need to empower each other, put it within the communities, within the people's hands, so that we can advocate for ourselves, and for generations to come. So our goals to address environmental injustices and health inequities caused by environmental racism and structured inequality. And we definitely use a community-based approach, focusing on citizen science and using these partnerships to push forward education, outreach, and also research. We generally connect with stakeholders within the Mid-Atlantic. So when I speak on the Mid-Atlantic region, I'm speaking on, of course, the DC, Maryland, Virginia, but also parts of West Virginia, Delaware, parts of PA, and parts of New Jersey as well. So I'm just going to kind of give a little more background, adding to what Dr. Phoenix already said. With respect to the Mid-Atlantic region, communities of color in this area face systemic environmental degradation and pollution due to highways, byways, industry, and poor zoning. And these factors create these unhealthy ecosystems. And again, as Dr. Phoenix stated, leading to greater exposure to air and water pollution, poor housing, and inadequate infrastructure, which in the long term results in health disparities and long-term impacts that affect the quality of life. So one of the, as Karen was able to say, that I do lead a number of projects within the center. And one of the projects that I am leading is known as the Mid-Atlantic Data Justice Collaborative. So this is adding to our hyperlocal air quality monitoring networks. When I say that, we have a number of different projects, air quality projects, that are working with different types of communities, again, within the Mid-Atlantic, so that we can install air quality sensors and gather data and help community members be able to do this for themselves and be community scientists themselves as well. The aim is to, because given the lack of high resolution data to inform action, there's a critical need for community engaged research that focuses on collecting better data on a neighborhood scale, as well as mitigating policies. So if you think about the EPA and their regulation, their air quality monitoring stations are about 25 miles apart from each other. That's not going to be collecting as much data as necessary or needed, I should say. And as we're in such a data-driven society right now, this is the need for the data is going to be increasing exponentially, because once you have the facts, it's harder to disprove. It's harder to push against communities. Once they have the facts, they have the data, this is what's happening in their space, and this is what we need to do differently. A lot of the times when, if it's just word of mouth, policymakers, decision makers, or whoever is in charge, don't take it as seriously as when you have the cold hard facts in front of your face. It's harder to ignore. So as I mentioned, the goals of this Mid-Atlantic Data Justice Collaborative is to ensure that more people of color are in these spaces, understanding what's happening in their community, armed with the information, armed with the knowledge to fight against those who are essentially not providing sustainable communities for themselves. Within a lot of the government spaces or even air quality spaces, the lack of representation is very apparent. As we move forward, it's growing, but we need to continue pushing. We need to continue growing these spaces, and the more we expand and collaborate with different communities, different groups, different organizations, it's helpful, because people want to be a part of it and people want to learn. They just don't know where to start. So within the Mid-Atlantic Data Justice Collaborative, we work with many different types of organizations. So we actually work with the United Church of Christ. We work with the AME, which is the African Methodist Episcopal Church. We've had some conversations with Karen. We've had conversations with I'm sorry, the Black, I just blanked, I'm so sorry. The Deltas and the AKAs, the historically Black sororities and fraternities, and many other organizations. So the aim is to ensure that everybody can be a part of collecting data, and then you also have access to that data, so you can see what's happening yourself. So you heard Dr. Phoenix speak on particulate matter, and I did kind of blank off some of my slides because, of course, I didn't want to be redundant, but I thought this was important to kind of show. So if you take a look at the image on the right, you'll see the sizes. Like, it gives you kind of an understanding of the sizes within, I'm so sorry, of particulate matter. So sorry about that. I was getting a call on my laptop. So essentially, you can see the unit of the metric unit of what PM 2.5 stands for in comparison with human hair and fine beach sand. You can see that PM 2.5 and PM 10 are both smaller in diameter, metric size, than a strand of human hair and of a particle of fine beach sand. So when we say, pay attention to what you're breathing in, be aware, people are like, oh, I can't even see anything. What you can't see is you're not even thinking about, you're not even going to think about something that you can't see. So with respect to the Mid-Atlantic Data Justice Collaborative, we are measuring PM 2.5. However, within other siege projects or siege programs, we measure, sometimes we measure black carbon, We just got some heat sensors that will be helpful for measuring urban heat island effect within specific cities, specifically Baltimore, or different neighborhoods or communities, but so on. You see how this can, PM 2.5 especially, can really get into your lungs. And if you're living in a space where there's a lot of pollutants, near to industrial plants, etc., you know, it's hard to not know what you're breathing in unless you know what you're breathing in. So I just briefly will speak on this. I know I touched on it earlier. Just wanted to kind of regurgitate the importance of community science. You know, yes, there are scientists and researchers and environmental health workers, etc., but you too can be a scientist. Anybody can be a scientist. And as I mentioned, we want to ensure that everybody, with people within the community, are becoming a part of the gathering, the science of environmental justice, so that once you see, you can't unsee, and you can at least be aware and try to get on board with helping yourself, your community, of building a better future. I mentioned this. And okay, so moving into this space, I'm just gonna lightly touch on environmental justice screening and mapping. This is a big chunk, and I don't think we have a lot of time for this, but it's very important to share with you all, if you don't know already. So environmental justice screening and mapping tools can be powerful allies in the fight for justice. So as these tools help you visualize and explore patterns of environmental and climate hazards. Dr. Phoenix just showed you a couple images from satellites, and essentially that's where environmental justice screening mapping tools kind of compound, or cross, I should say. And this kind of helps you figure out which communities are at risk from these hazards, and the compounded pollution and climate burdens that certain communities can face. A comprehensive environmental justice mapping tool is one that not only includes environmental and demographic indicators, so that can be, we're speaking about air quality can be added, climate indicators, demographic would be race, or low-income spaces, and then it also measures factors such as economic progress, health, and resiliency. So it's always great to have a cumulative assessment of these communities instead of just focusing on one thing. Now, although air quality monitoring isn't an environmental justice mapping tool, you can use air quality monitoring to assess an environmental injustice or environmental justice neighborhood. So as I mentioned, with the use of community science, you know, you can help determine the extent of pollution within a space or community. You can also, it allows the public to understand the extent of the pollution where they live. And it helps, you know, helps them understand or see if future interventions are necessary, but also see if prior interventions have been successful. And it also helps provide that community with data for future research. So I kind of just wanted to show you what a monitor will look like. This is an outdoor monitor. These are kind of chunky. So the monitors we use are a little more compact, definitely smaller on the more smaller size. But as I mentioned, these monitors essentially take in the air, the ambient air, which is the air just in your surrounding, and it measures the air quality. If there's an index rating, it measures the rating of the PM 2.5 that's being gathered. A lot of air quality monitors take in more than one type of pollutant. So they're There's carbon monoxide, there's NO2, ozone, lead, again, particulate matter, sulfur dioxide, and something called volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. So the far right is the air quality monitor that we use for the Mid-Atlantic Data Justice Collaborative. It is known as the Purple Air Monitor. It is a stationary monitor. There are two types of air quality sensors that you can utilize. The one on the left is within your app, within your phone in an app. So that would be a mobile. We also have other ones that you can click onto your backpack. It kind of looks like a USB port, USB, I should just say. So it's definitely much more, definitely more usable than, say, a stationary monitor. However, these stationary monitors are not as big as they look. This Purple Air Monitor is about 3.5 inches. And what you can do is just you fasten it to a pole. You can use a screw and put it into a wooden post. But if you didn't want to damage it, you put damage onto the surface, you can just use the zip ties. And in the picture on the far right, that is what you get within the box within the box that with the Purple Air, what you receive. So there's an extension cord, there's some zip ties, and there's also some screws if you need that. So within our project, we generally we don't give folks, you wouldn't have to buy it, is what I should just say. We would provide the monitor for you, and you would just collect the data at your space, within your space. One thing within the Purple Air is that it does not collect personal data. The only thing that happens is that we have to put the Purple Air onto a real-time map. So the only thing it does is it takes the geographic location of that monitor. So it's kind of spatially inserted into the real-time map, but it's anonymous. No one's personal information is there. And that's something that we kind of ensure that we want to make sure people are protected and not exposing their personal information. So essentially what is needed for some of these tools, we need a stable Wi-Fi connection, an external outlet or power source. And then you want to ensure that your sensor is high enough off the ground so that the data that it's collecting isn't obstructed by, it could be, smoke from a barbecue. I know this was Memorial Day weekend. I know hopefully we all had a little barbecue, but also, you want to ensure that rain or it's not like clogged in waterways, or there's not a lot of trees obstructing the air quality, or changing the air quality that's taken into the sensor. So again, I know we didn't have a lot of time, but I wanted to show you some of our resources that are publicly available to you all. And let me click this and hopefully it shares my screen. Okay, right. So this is our resource database that clearly doesn't want to open. Okay. And we have, this may seem a little overwhelming just looking at it, but I will drop this link into the chat and you can look through it on your own. There are a number of different lectures, different data tools, worksheets, infographics, curated for one of our specific programs, but it's publicly available to anybody because, again, when you have access to the resources, that's when we can grow as a community in different spaces. So we have resources focusing on peer-to-peer mentoring. We have grant writing workshops. We have community science again with air quality sensors. A lot of these are mixed in with our environmental justice and health disparities symposium videos. We have some some workshops on the MDEJ screening tool, which is a mapping tool that I didn't get to speak on, but we have a lot of things that you can look through and enjoy, I should say. So, take your time, and if you, wanted to listen to some lectures or watch some videos and really learn a lot of things, I'm happy to just drop this in the chat for anybody. And, thank you for having me, and thank you, Dr. Phoenix, and thank you, Karen, and everyone. So that's what I have for my presentation.
Thank you so much, Arielle. And thank you very much, Dr. Phoenix, for such an informative presentation that we received from you both today. And I hope you have a few minutes to stay with us for some question and answer. I know there are a lot of folks that have some questions, but I just want to extend an invitation to you both. I hope this is not the last time that we see you. We will be having meetings with members. I put a link in the chat for those that want to sign up to be a part of the study team. And hopefully we can be able to have more in-depth conversations, and of course, getting homework from both you and Dr. Phoenix as we move forward. But before I open it up, I just wanted to, again, thank you for the information. And National NAACP had written a report called Fumes Across the Fence Line, where it looked at the health impacts associated with those living within close proximity to fossil fuel facilities. And one of the startling results of that was they identified that school children, primarily Black school children living within 5 miles of these facilities, missed on average 101,000 days, 101,000 school days because of illnesses associated from the health impacts associated with the living close proximity. And if we kind of look at the domino effect of this, is we've got these kids missing multiple schools, they're falling back in their academic, and how much just this whole health part is so integral to the socio and economic advancement, not only of our school children, but also what we can do as adults. Our health is our wealth, right? So if we don't have our health, we can't go to work, we can't, achieve academic success and all of those things. And at the crux of this is this air quality. And I know there's a question in there somewhere. So I just wanted to, ask, here in Virginia, our air quality monitoring study is so scant. And based on your experience, and especially in what you said, how important it is for us to start collecting that data, are there ways in which we can use this data to support legislative and programmatic changes, particularly on a state level? And what are your thoughts? Are there certain guidelines that we should adhere to ensure that the data we receive can be used for other things? And I don't know who would like to start with that. I'll let you decide.
What's your preference, Dr. Phoenix?
Yeah, go ahead and start, Arielle, and I'll chime in afterwards. I did have another point about the monitoring I wanted to make.
Okay, sounds good. So, so with respect to bringing it, so I guess you're saying, how would it look if you wanted to bring it into schools, different programs, or would you, with respect to kids and children, and what would that look like? Oh, you're muted, sorry. So sorry.
I think what I was trying to figure out was, I just wanted to get that fact out, but the question was, how can we, when we do the study, are there any
yeah, blockages? Okay, thank you for that. Yes. So essentially the aim for the Mid-Atlantic, at least for this Mid-Atlantic Data Justice Collaborative, is to have the data and then use the data after to push against different policies and work within those spaces. We haven't ironed out some of those things, but the purple air is it's regulated already. I mean, I feel like the data that is collected has been used in different projects. The map, I actually should show you the map of all of the monitors that are across the United States. I can show you the real-time map and kind of fiddle with it and show you how you can download that data for yourself as well. Anybody can download it. So the data that is collected, it's fine to use, is what I should just say. So there's no stipulations, there's no blockages, but it's very eye-opening when you see how it's being collected. And like, even I know I'm tangenting, but even, do y'all remember that wildfire event last year? When we took a look at the board, it's okay. So green, when I show you it, green is good. Purple and maroon it's like terrible, and everything was purple and maroon. And so what we did is that we kind of downloaded data across all of the air quality projects and showed our communities and people who we were working with, showing them what's happening here and how this data is, what's happening, what you can do to kind of mitigate any illnesses, what you can do if you're feeling sick, kind of giving folks a little news packet to understand what's happening. So our intention, at least on our end, is to feed some of that air quality data into our MD EJ screen, which is the Maryland EJ screen. It's another mapping tool. I know it's a lot of tools, but it's another mapping tool that we've been using Dr. Wilson has been using it for years, I should say. And that has been at the base of a lot of our manuscripts, a lot of our research writing. And when we do work with different communities to kind of help them advocate for themselves, we ensure that the mapping tools are a very big component. So I can't speak on some of the policy, because we can't go into the community and stand with them and, push and fight with them, but we can provide the technical assistance and fight on that end with them. But there have been some spaces. So for example, we have a case study within Bladensburg, and they were trying to build a cement plant in the middle of a community, right around the corner from, I believe it was a school. And we were able to share the data of what that would do within the community, and they were able to shut down the plant. So it's things like that. So maybe not necessarily, I mean, the aim is policy level, but it still was able to help this community fight for themselves. That was a little long-winded, but yeah.
If I could just add to what Arielle had to say, there's kind of a spectrum between those monitors that are, can be miles apart, that your environmental quality agency mounts. They're stationary, and they're regulatory in nature. The data that's coming from those helps your environmental agency regulate air quality in your community. And so, if there are exceedances from those stationary monitors that are placed by the environmental agency, then those could be acted upon, because it can trigger violations of the Clean Air Act, and a whole cascade of events will come into play. At the other end of the spectrum are kind of some of the portable monitors, like the Purple Air, that communities can place themselves and gather data themselves. And they are more flexible. They tend to be collecting data in a more localized geographic area. Okay. But unfortunately, the data doesn't, kind of trigger the regulatory authority of the environmental agency. So the key is really to take some of the data that you're gathering at the community level. I recommend kind of pairing that with some health data that shows that the community where you're seeing some of these higher levels of, maybe it's particulate matter, maybe it's something else, kind of, it follows the same geographic pattern in terms of these health disparities. And asthma is a great one, but you might want to look at other things like diabetes or, lung cancer. There are a bunch of them that cluster together. And then you can go to your environmental quality agency and say, hey, we think there's a hot spot here. Here's the data we've collected ourselves. Here's the data on health disparities. We think you should put a monitor here. And in DC, we've actually been able to get DC's Department of Energy and Environment to kind of step out on a limb, if you will, and put in some additional monitors in some of the neighborhoods where we know there are these extra exposures. So once you can kind of engage and kind of take the locally collected data that communities have participated in gathering and use that to leverage some attention by your environmental agency, then you can kind of get things moving. Because once they put an official monitor in place and start to see some of the same things that you're seeing with the data that you're collecting, then they have to act on it. And it can be stopping a facility like a cement plant. It can be stopping anything else noxious from being placed in that community. And then potentially it can build and allow you to start making a case that some of the things that are already there, like perhaps the transportation infrastructure, also need to be addressed so that you can bring those baseline levels down to a more normal level.
Thank you. I think we have time for maybe one more question. Sujata, let me know how we're doing on time. I think Charles has, oh, okay, you're back. Charles has his hand raised. Charles, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, I've saw some studies talking about the difference of air quality inside versus outside of buses and wondered if you had seen those as well, or they showed that marked increase in the pollutants inside buses. So, people who are poor tend to use buses more, and then they're exposed to, higher nitrous oxide, particulates, CO, all that kind of stuff. Wondered if you all had seen those studies and have any of those data as well.
I have not, but I'm not surprised to hear that, there may be issues in terms of ventilation that are affecting people who are using public transportation. And if it's a non-electric vehicle, whether it's gasoline powered or diesel powered, I wouldn't be surprised that people inside those vehicles are breathing air that's problematic. In much the same way that if you're inside and there's a gas stove, then you're breathing air that's problematic.
Well, yeah, I dropped one study I saw on the subject in the chat, and if you had others, I'd be interested to hear what you think of those.
There's a lot of literature. I mean, this is no longer kind of this body of literature is not in its infancy anymore. It's pretty well developed, pretty solid. It's a matter of us figuring out how to undo some of these things that are historical. What do you do about the highway? I've been recommending that they blow up 295. No one's listening to me yet, but that has actually been done in some communities. They've taken the transportation infrastructure down. Especially roads that were, not only polluting, but have also bifurcated historical communities. No, that
Whitehurst. I think Whitehurst Freeway is would be my first choice over 295. But yeah, both. Well, just because it's closer to the population. But yeah, I haven't thought about 295 in that aspect as well. The prevailing winds are west to east, so that doesn't help.
I think Leon, is that yes meaning your hand is raised?
Well, yeah, I was trying to raise my hand. My question was, it seems at some point you have to associate your data you collect with sources. And I wonder if you could speak about that. How is that done, after the regulatory agency gets involved, or it seems like it might be a difficult thing to do in the case of transportation, and there's a lot of different people own different vehicles, and well, would you just speak about the identifying sources?
Well, I guess I would say there's no need to reinvent, the wheel. I mean, you don't have to recreate studies that have been done that have, really documented the link between exposure to these emissions from vehicles, particularly the diesel. If diesel is a particularly bad actor. But there's no need to have to repeat those studies for every single traffic corridor in the United States. I mean, there have been enough studies done in enough places that you shouldn't have to prove this. It's already been proven. All you need to do is cite.
And yeah, I definitely agree, Dr. Phoenix. To your, I mean, I have a thought to that. So, and I know I'm speaking about the purple air, but it's only because, I mean, there are other monitors that you can utilize as well, or sensors, I should say. But within the real-time map, you can see when there are spikes of pollution spikes in the air, I should say. So with respect to, let's say, some of the monitors, if it's close to a highway or byway, you can see when it spikes during rush hour in the morning, during rush hour in the afternoon as well. So from that, we can estimate that it is the amount of car exhaust that is being put into the air near to that specific sensor. Sometimes there are anomalies. Sometimes the sensors they might be reading a really high number, and around the other monitors are a regular and normal, I should say, or in the clear. Sometimes that could be a result of construction. That could be a result of, I'm not sure, like a fire, something that is producing this PM 2.5 that's being taken into the sensor. So sometimes you kind of have to look at it from over a period of time, and also season by season, because it can change. So that the more data, the better, I should say, to identifying what these specific sources are.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, we've got 3 more minutes. I just wanted to go to our chat to see if we have any questions there. And then I'll give you both an opportunity if you wanted to close up, and then we'll transfer the meeting back over to our first Vice President, Dr. Sujatha Hampton.
Mike O'Brien has his hand up.
Oh, I'm glad you pointed that out. I was looking at another screen. Hi, Mike.
Hey, I just popped that hand up because Karen, I was wondering if you could just take a minute to talk about the project that we're planning to do, even though I know it's not set in stone, but maybe you can just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. So more than likely, the target location is going to be the Route 1 community, identifying any of the facilities that are known to emit noxious fumes, whether it's transportation, as Dr. Phoenix highlighted. It could also include something that's energy generating facility. It could be a landfill or what have you. Then the thing is, one, developing, finalizing what that methodology will be, and then identifying individuals within those communities to install one of those air quality monitor, more than likely the purple air monitor that Arielle had discussed. And then over a course of time, there will be teaching, this is how you can monitor it, and then the next step would be going into those, interpreting those online analysis tools that Arielle had mentioned, the real-time mapping, and then we can kind of come up with a baseline that says, we've got this area in which their air quality is such and such, in comparison to other areas. And that's going to help you know, it could serve so many different things, whether to justify why the state needs a more comprehensive air quality system. That, you know, as Arielle had mentioned, it's that some of them are so vastly located, so widely located that the data is not as accurate as it could or should be. It could even go into, I believe it was Evelyn who mentioned that we're getting electric school buses, right? So if we have electric school buses and we've had them for a year and we don't see a lowering of, you know, our air pollutants due to diesel school buses, let's say, that's a clear indicator that the inventory is not being equitably distributed within Fairfax County, meaning the more affluent communities receive the EV, the electric vehicle, the electric buses, and the older vehicles were placed in other areas. And so there are a lot of different things that we can use it. And it could be the HOA could also use it, or whoever we choose to justify, you know, getting resources for tree canopy to help do cleaning or those types of things. So the recommendations at the end is going to be vast and diverse, and it's going to talk about policy and programs and all of those different things. And I also invited, yes, he's still here, that the Youth Council would have a really great opportunity to have an educational firsthand experience of some of these and learning about some of these to open their experience as they determine what they want to do as they move in their future careers.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks for asking that. I didn't do that earlier. Let's see.
Have any more questions in the chat that I can see?
Thank you, Dr. Hampton.
If our speakers would like to close out, we can share meeting. We have some closing words, closing remarks.
It looks like we may have lost Arielle.
I think we got all the questions.
Okay.
If Arielle's not here, I'll go ahead and close. So, you know, I think that, you know, there's an old joke that there's someone standing under a stoplight looking for keys that they lost, and someone comes up and says, where'd you lose your keys? And they said, well, I lost my keys over in the field. And they said, well, why are you looking for them under the light? And they said, well, the light's better here, and that's why I'm looking, you know. But that's what comes to mind when I hear these environmental agencies talk about where these monitors have been placed. You know, it's almost as if there was a deliberate pattern of siting them in places where they weren't going to measure high levels of things. Certainly that was a pattern in the District of Columbia. And I've even heard them publicly acknowledge that they didn't want to put the monitors too close to facilities that they knew were emitting things because it might kind of wash out the baseline. So there's a lot of averaging, there's a lot of placement issues. And then there are these things called time-weighted averages where they basically take, you know, they take a time period of 8 hours and average the level of pollutants over that entire 8-hour period, so that if there are spikes that might be related to, you know, rush hour, for example, those get washed out. So, you know, if I had to design a system that wouldn't measure what I know to be there, it would be the current system. And so, you know, that's kind of where you're starting from. You really need to combat that framework of, you know, not really focusing on the communities where all of these things are, the transportation facilities, the energy generating facilities, any industry, you know, it's all in the same place. And that's really where you need to be monitoring. And the advantage of the purple monitors is that they all get fed into this mapping system. All the data from all of the purple monitors gets fed into a mapping system. So you can actually download and see in real time, you know, where the levels are. So that is an advantage to the system that it sounds like you're thinking about using for this project. But really, eventually, you have to get the regulatory folks to be thinking differently, and they have to embrace the notion that they may have to come down off these very, very expensive, but very, very misplaced set of monitors that they have in place and move towards some of these less expensive, more flexible models that will, that won't cost them as much to implement, but will really do a better job of reflecting the conditions in communities of color.
Makes good sense, especially this idea that perhaps they're putting them in places where you're not going to necessarily find anything that would require you to have to do something is ever so convenient, because what are they going to do when they find out the reality that, as you said, is well-known reality? But I mean, maybe with time. I think the same thing about the heat maps. We just, when we look at the heat maps and when there's no green space, what happens to the heat? And the same thing is all, what are you going to do? You got to put those plants somewhere. It's not going to be in Great Falls, So,
Exactly.
Anyway.
I think Ms. Wharton rejoined.
Yes.
Do you want to ask her?
There, Arielle?
Yes, I did. I'm so sorry. My laptop loves to embarrass me. So
if you have anything you'd like to say to close out.
I think I feel like we talked about a lot, actually. I'm surprised we got through so much, but I'm happy to chat about this moving forward. I know this program that Karen dropped in the chat would be something very great and very rewarding for you all too, because you really it's exciting to be gathering and seeing how it's moving on your own as well. So I think she dropped it again. So yeah, I'm happy to be here and happy to talk with you all. And I take a look at all the resources as well. I know it's a little overwhelming, but definitely a great space if you just want to, again, turn on a video and listen to conversations from a lot of EJ and environmental health and climate and even community people. So
this was a really enlightening talk. I really appreciate you all coming. Karen, if you have anything else to add, otherwise I will ask. I don't know I don't even remember how I'm to adjourn the meeting, but if somebody could, if I need to actually adjourn it or if I could just say goodnight, I don't even know.
I don't have anything else, but I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Well, thank you very much, ladies, for your contribution. I really appreciate the information. I look forward to seeing you maybe back when we're doing in the middle of the study or when the study is over. That could be a really fun meeting to do some analysis together on our general membership meeting. I would welcome that if that was possible. So on that note,
thank you for joining us. It was really very informative. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Night.
Bye.